Hello, people from all over the world. We have a new guest today. Marty had a last minute technical hiccup at an airport, and we have Tom Crown. Tom Crown on the chat last week said, "Can I join you guys?" And I said, "Yep, next availability, you're on." And here you are. I'm a man of my word. So we have Mando, of course, CTO, and Tom. Let's introduce Tom before we jump into the very detailed agenda. Tom, can you tell us in 25 seconds, 30 seconds, for those that don't know you in the space or follow you on Twitter or YouTube, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a big Bitcoin guy. I'd say an OG crypto streamer at this point on YouTube, about 6 years. And I'm just like a normal person. I just fell in love with Bitcoin and crypto and never really left.
Awesome. My microphone, of course, I never remember to turn it on. There it is. My microphone is on. Now I'm back. So, and Manda, how are you doing this morning? You look happy in your purple.
Yeah, I'm great, man. I'm great. A bit of a more of a choppy week, which I think we'd kind of said that I don't think you need to FOMO in at this sort of stage. Like I said, like my only thing apart from Bitcoin has really been owning a bit more ETH beta recently, which has done okay this week. It's definitely outperformed, but still down a little bit. So yeah, okay week for me. Pretty chill.
Yeah. And we did have the typical buy the rumor, the Bitcoin conference, and then the overhang, the hangover from Vegas, which we'll talk about a bit too. And CTO, my friend, how are you?
I am great. I'm fantastic. I'm excited to show some charts, hear your thoughts about everything.
Exactly. Let's get into the quick agenda right now. And we're going to be talking about a lot, but a few of the things I do want to talk about and what people want to hear about, more importantly, it's not what we want to talk about, it's what the audience wants, is June seasonality. What type of picture does it paint for us? Where are we going in the month of June? And what does the summer outlook look like? And then we're going to talk about the AI Bitcoin Nexus. I've been talking for years about the convergence between AI and crypto. They are the two narratives that I invest in. But at the Bitcoin conference, for the first time in my life, we had at least 4 speakers talk about exactly this. We'll try to unpack what they're meaning because they're very vague, but I'm trying to go behind the skin of the vagueness and try to pull out some alpha as well, the overlap and what could be happening. And people are frustrated. Bitcoin's at 104,000 and people are still frustrated. And especially those that hold altcoins, they are losing their minds. So we need to give them a little bit of calming, like, is alt season dead? That question keeps coming up. We'll talk about gaming and AI token strength. Mando, that's your wheelhouse. And some Solana suppression news, as well as Axiom. Has anybody traded on Axiom? We'll talk about that thing exploding now too. And a whole bunch more. We'll even talk about Ethereum having a new piece of plan to get to scale faster. We'll look at that too, which dovetails into what Manda said last week. He likes ETH here. And sector rotation. A lot of people are so frustrated with altcoins. Should they just start investing in AI stocks? Which is super interesting. So we'll go around the table and figure all that out. But why don't we start with, of course, a little bit of charting as to where we are. And Tom, feel free to chime in on CTO's charts as well as we go through them. CTO, over to you. Where are we?
Thank you. Yeah, so this was a legit breakout. We had this resistance level that rejected so many times, 12, 14 times, and then suddenly it broke out. And this was a legit breakout. So this guy, what's his name? James Wynn, right? Who went like 100 million long here. I mean, I understand him, and he was surely not alone. This was a legit breakout. So there would have been, he's not an idiot. There was a lot of people, I think, open new longs here because it was a legit breakout. You know, we're not talking about something advanced here. It's like support and resistance. It's stuff that basically everyone followed for 100 years. And then what happens? Instead of like really taking off here, we fell back down below the breakout level, which liquidated this James guy for 100 million and surely a whole bunch of other people.
Let me chime in there for a second before we go on. I said on a Spaces 11 days ago to the day that he is going to be hunted because he was too public with his position. Do you believe, CTO, he was hunted?
Oh, it can absolutely be. I think he and everyone else who probably also opened new positions here, because I mean it was a legit breakout. So a lot of big players, he and many others. And where would they put the stop loss? They would put the stop loss or liquidation level a little bit below the breakout level. So that's where price went, and they all got liquidated. And so the question now is, was the breakout the fake, or is this dip below, below this level? Is that the fake? Are we in the fake now? And it's literally just about liquidating those people, hunting those stop losses, hunting those liquidations, and then we run up the real move. And I mean, no one can know for sure. I think that the trick here is to not make everything in one bet. He kind of took the right position. He just took too big of a risk, because I also felt that a fake out can happen. I said, was it also like almost 2 weeks ago, like I half expect a fake. Like when it breaks out of such a key level, I do half expect that we could get a fake, and that could be what we're in now. And in that case, this means nothing. It's just a liquidation, and then we run up. But you never know. So I think key is to not take too big risks like that James did. Be more careful with
James
that.
Wynn, not me. Big difference. Well, Tom, what do you make of all of this? What do you see here in this chart and that whole experience?
Well, I got to agree with what CTO said here. We saw a very nice rally here in May. It's kind of unusual, at least for this bull run, to see a Q2 rally. We had a red Q1 that kind of diverges from what we've seen. So it's clearly this year is going to have some shakeups. I think a fake out here was to be expected on some level, more than I was comfortable with this pullback. And maybe James did have something to do with it, his position, yelling, "Come liquidate me," at the very top price with $1 billion. I think that is a juicy target for market makers, really just for people looking to sweep up that trade. And, it really did happen.
Yeah. And Mando, I'm going to share Tom's tweet here because I thought it was kind of funny. James Wynn is looking for donations so he can fight the cabal. Did you send him 100 million USDC, Mando?
He's a strange follow, honestly. Like, even when he was up 90 million, he was trying to shill meme coins, and he was sharing his ref link for Hyperliquid. It was strange guy to follow in day in, day out. I wouldn't overthink James Wynn. That's all I would say. The guy was 40x long $1.1 billion of Bitcoin. Like, anyone who's 40x long anything can get liquidated very, very quickly. And if you're long 1.1 billion, of course you're going to get hunted. Of course you're going to get hunted. So I think it was really bad risk management. He went long, short. This wasn't just like a guy got liquidated. He just had a big run of losing trades. And I think that, it just proves that you can lose it all very, very quickly. With leverage.
And by the way, before I forget, because we got a packed agenda, links below on my channel. You can watch everybody on everybody's channel. We're the new all-in pod for finance, AI, crypto, etc. But Tom Crown's below, Mando's below, his newsletter, Mando's Twitter, CTO's channel, all this good stuff is there too. So don't forget. But this tweet was very funny, and Tom, I hope you don't mind me sharing it.
No, of course. But, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion really quick. No one knew who this guy was, like, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And at Vegas, everyone was talking about him. Everyone was talking about Hyperliquid. I have this feeling it's like maybe he's just the best marketer ever. Maybe he has positions open in the other direction on other exchanges or something. And maybe he's not really losing this 100 million. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll give you a personal story. So I had a lot of thoughts, and I didn't want to bring anybody bad juju, but people who know me know I was planning to contra trade against him because I knew he'd be hunted. So it was an obvious short. When we saw Bitcoin 108K, 109K, I was going to do it, but then it wouldn't feel right to go against somebody. So I left it, but I did in the process try wire up my Hyperliquid account and worked with my MetaMask wallet, moving USDC and all that crap. The user experience is horrific on that platform. I mean, it's like going back 10 years. I don't know if anybody else has tried to use it. It's kludgy, it's cumbersome. You're going back to the ETH days. It is extraordinarily painful. I will never do it again. So I prefer perping elsewhere. Did anybody else try to use Hyperliquid?
Well, I think the issue is that you have to use MetaMask. Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, which is awful. Yeah, I mean,
I think the actual platform itself is actually it's better than most perp dexes. But I would agree that like the bit that feels janky is the bit where you have to use the ETH rails.
yeah, exactly, which is the whole thing.
Which is
and then the Arbitrum connection and even buying Hyperliquid and moving it to a wallet is just the UX is disastrous in my opinion. Anyway, that's just from traffic. Let's get into the agenda a little bit. I want to talk about where we are with seasonality right now. June, what's next? So Zico asked for a June prediction from Plan B, and Plan B says a new all-time high. We'll see. Let's look at some data before. Where is slide number 4? Whoops. Hang on a second. Where is my slide number 4? This is weird. Something's out of sequence here. There. June seasonality is actually slide number 3. My bad. If we look at this chart here, June typically is a good year where Bitcoin's on average up 7%. We never know what's going to happen. Some people still believe in sell in May, go away. I don't think that it's on the cards this year because of the 2 months we lost due to tariff tantrums. So everything is delayed. Deployment of capital is delayed. I say June could still be positive. And when I look at all the treasuries that are popping up every single day, it's bonkers. We did have a catastrophic Feb, which normally is the best month of the year, down 14.6 versus the average of being up 14.6. And March break even, April 14%, May 11%, and June so far down a fraction. Well, I'll give it to you, Tom, first. What do you expect for June for Bitcoin?
May closed, all-time high, the candle, even though it came down quite a bit.
The monthly close,
Yeah, I think the logical move is to see some more upside here. I'm looking for another all-time high. I think that's reasonable.
You're on Plan B's page. CTO, what do you see?
Yeah, I have as usual one. Not sure about June specifically. I mean, I'm leaning bullish. If I have to guess, I would guess that the current dip is the fake, not the breakout. But you never know. But I have one interesting chart as usual.
Yeah, let me pull that up.
If you look at seasonality and previous halvings, one pattern that was very significant in all the 3 previous cycles was that the length of the pump after the halving was the same as the length of the pump before the halving, exactly, but it was higher in amplitude. So you see this box here, the previous halving in 2020. This box is as long as this box, but it's higher. And then if you look at the previous one, same thing, same length, higher. One before that, same thing, same length, but higher. So that was one pattern that we don't know yet if it will play out, but it was a 4th time. Like the length of the pump before the halving, then came the halving in April 2024. And then if the pump after the halving is the same length, it would go on until September this year. And if it's slightly bigger in amplitude, it would kind of take us up here. But as you see now, we're kind of running a little bit late. If we get up here, it's not on the same parabola anymore, as you can see here.
But we do know it can happen in 10 weeks or less. That big
I mean,
move.
It could still happen. It could be like we get a crazy blow off to top. But maybe bond yields fail and people are running somewhere where their money. Where will they run? They run to gold and Bitcoin. It could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's something to watch for. Like, is the 4-year cycle changing this time? Perhaps it's longer and slower. That could be one thing. Perhaps it will still go here. It just takes a little bit longer. And so this is one thing that I'm looking out in terms of, like, when talking about the cyclic nature and this seasonality, that I think is interesting. Yeah. We are still holding the parabola, though.
Yeah, Mando, on the longer and slower, there are some things that are very different this time. One, we hit a new all-time high before the halving, which has never happened, which means that the ETFs drove what I call a front running of the price action. And maybe that's why this season is longer and slower. Also, the asset's a lot bigger, so it takes a lot more cheddar to move it. It's $2 trillion. What do you think, Mando, of CTS theory?
I think longer and slower. I think I've said a few times that I don't think this cycle feels like any of the others, just because the market structure has changed in terms of who the buyers are. I think I would agree with what CTO says. It feels as though what I've seen on the timeline over the last week or so is like, oh, this looks just like 2021. In that you've had Bitcoin just hit a little bit of an all-time high again, and then we're going to go so much lower, and everyone's going to get wrecked. I think people are under invested, or at least have bought the wrong things. Maybe continually calling for an altcoin season, and I think they're probably in a little bit of pain over the last week because you saw a big move down in a number of different altcoins. I would be wary of thinking that we're not going to continue to push higher here. Like I can imagine we could touch around 100K again on Bitcoin, but I think you're going to continue to have buyers, and I think you can push on towards an all-time high. I think the fallacy would be to believe that that's going to lead to an all-time high in a bunch of different altcoins, and I'd be very, very selective.
Yeah, good point. All right, let's get into the big story, at least for me, AI Bitcoin Nexus. There was a lot of talk at the conference, and we've been talking about these topics for quite some time, but research suggests that both are being increasingly connected. A lot of people are talking about this, but not saying exactly why. It was highlighted again 4 times at the Bitcoin conference, but it seems like perhaps digital scarcity and AI adoption are bringing about this convergence. But what exactly does that mean? And evidence leads towards, things like Bitcoin's fixed supply and maybe AI's lack of electricity to drive forward. That's also kind of like a fixed supply, or AI's potential use of Bitcoin. Where do you see this go? There's also some rumors right now as well that there could be a lot of AI CapEx that's being used right now to mine Bitcoin, to drive Bitcoin accumulation, which is an interesting angle. I'm stretching here. I'm trying to figure out, the Bitcoin conference was for many a bit of a disappointment. There was a lot of repeat speak and a lot of vague speak. There was very little concrete there. The only concrete thing I got away from it was from Saifedean, where he said Tether could go to $1.2 peg, which is actually logic for many. But I'm going to hit you up, Tom. First of all, do you see this nexus happening? Do you see any correlation between AI and Bitcoin right now at all, or in the future?
I'm just as lost as you are. There's the logical, they're both. Their blood is the same. They're both using processing power, computers, chips.
Yeah.
The crossover, I didn't get really what they're talking about at the conference either. But the one thing that stuck with me was Saylor's speech when he did his 21 points. One of them kind of alluded to AI will prefer programmable money.
Yes.
And even that's vague, but that stuck with me a little bit. I kind of, that clicked a little bit here. It's like, do you think AI is going to be trying to, in this sense, accumulate dollars, or is it going to look for something native to itself? And I feel like logically that makes sense. And
he's a thermodynamics engineer, so he understands how money can be converted to energy and vice versa, and how energy converts, creates tokens, which can be charged for as well. CTO, I'll give this to you before Mando, because this is a tricky one, but with your technological experience, what do you think?
Yeah, so I feel that they're both part of the same synergies. I made this term like era digitalis, and the point is that it's not only 7 points, it's 7 points that synergize each other. They are in synergy with each other. So we have the digital lifestyle, we spend more time digitally. We have the digital ownership, which is Bitcoin. It's like owning things, evolution of NFTs, whatever it will be in the future. We have the artificial intelligence. We have peer-to-peer media, global protocols, VR, and in the future we'll have more brain interfaces and so on. So they are all part of us going into the digital world with both feet. And that's what's happening in the world. And then these are going to reinforce each other, and how they will synergize I don't think anyone can completely picture, but I'm sure that they will. For example, AI, they're not going to use Visa cards if they are buying for things. They will obviously use crypto wallets. So, and 1,000 other synergies. That's what's going to happen. Like the rise of AI agents will strengthen the use case for crypto. The fact that we're using digital money and have established that ecosystem enable AI agents to become more powerful. So that's what synergy means, that the other points strengthen the other points. And that, I think, is what we're seeing here. Then, of course, short term, there could be some competition for the investment, like should the investor invest in NVIDIA or Bitcoin? Yeah, maybe they're sitting and debating that. So, of course, there could be some short term trade-off there, but long term, they are reinforcing each other. That's my take on this.
Okay, Mando, over to you. What do you see?
I don't just want to echo what CTO said. I think there's two. The main point is, one, it's programmable, so it's very easy for AI to use. That could be said for any chain, though. Like you could be like, oh, well, Solana will be the chain for that, or ETH will be the chain for that. I think the interesting thing, or maybe the dystopian thing about Bitcoin is decentralization makes it more difficult to censor. So with AI agents, like a stable coin, you could lock down various different stable coins. And you could even do that with some chains. But like if you're really looking at a world of like AI agents with their own economy, you could argue that Bitcoin is going to be that world because it is far more difficult to censor than the other chains. So like if you really wanted to let AI run riot, it would probably happen on Bitcoin. Or at least a chain where it was far more difficult to actually control. Whereas stablecoins, that would be relatively easy. But like if I was looking at a dystopian future where AI also wanted to have power, and actually gain power for themselves, it may be through Bitcoin rather than any other L1.
Good stuff. All right, moving on. We're going to go to institutional versus retail Bitcoin demand. It's pretty clear. I've been saying here for a while, and this is last year. Treasuries are it. It's like Toys R Us. Treasuries are it. It's all treasury game right now. Sovereigns, pensions, etc. That's driving the demand for Bitcoin. And retail's absence. In fact, I calculated so far this year, retail has sold another 250,000 Bitcoin. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that goes straight to the bags of MicroStrategy, and then everything else is kind of cream. Where's all this Bitcoin coming from? There was a guy called, I think, Eric Trump, one of the Trump sons. He said OTC desks are running out. I track the OTC desks. They're actually not. They're pretty stable, but he says a supply crunch is coming. And what's exactly going on here, Tom? Tell me your perspective of, is retail absent from the Bitcoin space this cycle? Second of all, is it all treasuries? Third of all, is there any chance of a supply crunch? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, retail, I believe, is almost completely absent. At least I see that on my channel in the metrics, the analytics. I compare this to even March of last year, where there was much more retail. And I think we can all agree it's probably due to altcoins not performing, but they're then not jumping onto the Bitcoin boat either. I'm sorry, what was the second part?
The second part, it's all treasuries this year.
Treasuries.
This bull run.
That was the only thing they talked about at the conference. It was just corporate treasuries. That was maybe the only new thing. And stable coins, of course. Not so much Bitcoin, except stable coins and treasuries. I am waiting for retail to return as a sign of the top. And I think that's good news for the bulls out there, because I think we're still very, very far from that.
Yeah.
A supply crunch, I'm the biggest bull ever. And I guess I have to see it to believe it. When is this coming? Saylor has bought billions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin and doesn't really seem to have that much change on the chart.
Since
when does
September,
this kick in?
Just a key point. Since September, Saylor has bought the next 3 years of Bitcoin supply. One person. BlackRock has bought over the last year the next 4 years of supply. Those two players, 7 years of supply is gone. And remember, I'm assuming the same 450 Bitcoin issued per day, which changes in 2 years, 11 months, and that goes down to 225 Bitcoin a day. Then you're talking going at a decade plus. It's bonkers. So I hear you. Mando, what do you make of all of this? Retail is absent, I believe, as well. Unit bias has a large part of that. Retail isn't going to buy a $100,000 item. That's why I think it was the guy from Square, Jack, said we need to change the term Satoshi to Bitcoin, and it'll make retail feel much more confident. Mando, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think this was the most corporate Bitcoin conference that you've seen in a long time. It was a lot of people in suits coming up, talking about stable coins and corporate treasuries. I do think this is the trade. Part of it has been the success of MicroStrategy, right? Like, if MicroStrategy continues to trade at multiple X books, then it's just going to be a circus of new people coming in and saying like, oh, we can do the same thing, we can do the same thing, and it's extending out to other things. Like, we've seen it now extend to Solana. This week we saw the first foray on ETH, and just as long as you keep on seeing these big moves in stocks on the back of that, I think this is going to continue. I do think it may be a problem down the line, but for now it feels as though it's a little bit of a bubble, and you can kind of ride it. That you're going to have a continued demand for some of these L1s with big ETFs.
Like, you see all these zombie companies. It's like, okay, we're dead. We've got no revenue. We've got no customers. We've got no roadmap. Let's start a Bitcoin treasury. This is coming out of the woodwork every single day. It's hilarious. Even MetaPlanet was technically one of those companies. They had one hotel, and they saw it going nowhere because of the ongoing depression in Japan, and said, yeah, let's talk to Dylan LeClaire, see what he says. Oh, let's do a Bitcoin. And it becomes the hottest stock in Japan like ever in the history of the world. CTO, retail absent. Do you see that in your metrics that Tom said?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that was one guy in the comments here, Trevor, scrolled past it. I think he nailed it. He said that he wrote that Trevor wrote that retail is not looking for a 2x.
No.
They're looking for 100x. So if the altcoins are not moving, they're not really interested. And I think that is really nailing it, even though, 2x is a fantastic investment, they can't be bothered. So I think that's the altcoins have performed really badly for quite a long time. And that's why retail isn't here.
Yeah. A lot of people saying also, I'm looking for the Trevor comment. It is on the money. But people are saying retail is broke, etc. Retail has no money. And yeah, and I've been saying for years, sometimes the danger that retail does is they hear these glamorous stories of, again, the winner, James Wynn, making $100 million, and they want to be that guy. But everybody, there's no such thing as GRQ. I did an April Fool's years ago of the danger of get rich quick. Okay. If you try get rich quick, you will blow yourself up. It's pretty much guaranteed. Get rich slowly is the old adage from the market. And, for most investors, even hedge funds, you know what the goal of a hedge fund is? You do, Mando. It's to beat the S&P 500. It's to make 12% a year. And they got some of the smartest brains in the world. So when these retail investors come in, I want to do 100x, I want to do 1000x, and I listen to all these channels giving them all this nonsense information. Yeah, it's Tom. I see you nodding your head there. What do you think?
You're going to end up just like James Wynn. It's just the same story. He went for the 100x, man. He ended up with losing 100 million.
Yeah, blow up your bag. Easy come, easy go. And anybody with any modicum of financial knowledge, and Mandy, you'll see this. If you, the rule number one, if you make money, take your initial capital off the table. That's the base step one. Would you agree?
Depends on the bet. Depends on the bet.
He's a DJ. Oh dear.
Sometimes I'll add to a winner. I'm telling you now. What I would say about James Wynn is, like, there was a lot of talk about, oh, this is so amazing. Like when he was like putting on these huge trades and he made the money, and a lot of people thought, I have to be James Wynn. And you were trying to do. There's a time to lever trade, in my opinion, and it's never all-time highs. It's never all-time highs. You lever trade nowhere close, because when you start breaking all-time highs, you get close to it. The actual intraday candles that you can get are crazy. Like, it can move up higher and move up and down in wicks 5% on Bitcoin. So the idea that you should be levered trading at that stage is like a really dangerous point for me. I actually prefer, if you're going to take more risk, be like spot altcoins if you want to move into other stuff at that time. But lever trading, even on majors, I think is really dangerous once you start breaking all-time highs. So I just think it was a classic case of somebody rode it to all-time highs really well and then just got caught out by how the market always changes when that happens. Go back to every single time we've broken through all-time highs. It's exactly the same.
And I see it too. The market makers, they're in collusion. Arbitrum is inclusion with Coinbase. Binance's inclusion with Wintermute. They all work together. And if you think for a second that they don't, you're very mistaken. Let's talk about one other big thing that happened at the Bitcoin conference, which we've been hoping for a long time. Bitcoin lending has gone mainstream. Okay. Now, this is, I think, one of the biggest things when you get people like Cantor Fitzgerald dedicating a $2 billion fund to lend out against your Bitcoin. And these are the same people that hodl 100,000 Bitcoin on behalf of Tether. That's a trusted Wall Street name that goes way back in history. I remember way back in the day, I was actually on a flight to New York to be in a meeting in a place which was not too far away from where Cantor Fitzgerald got taken down in 9/11. It was terrible. But that firm is a firm that you can trust. They've been around for a long time, and now they're getting into this as well as many other players. So we were just waiting for that time before, really trusted players could do this. I've never borrowed against Bitcoin in my life. But now, for the first time, I'm considering it. So CTO, the beauty of this is if you can borrow against your Bitcoin, there's no reason to ever sell it. So it makes the asset even harder. If you need lifestyle chips, if you need to pay your mortgage, you need to buy a new car, Tom, etc., you can borrow against your Bitcoin. You don't have to sell it. Is this good for the space with these trusted players?
It's definitely good for Bitcoin. And I mean, if taking a step back, a lot of rich people, they don't sell their assets because if they sell the asset, they realize the capital gains tax. Now I see some more countries are thinking about implementing unrealized gains tax. But if that, at least today, usually that's not the case. You have tax when you sell it. So if you don't sell it and instead take out a new loan and use those money instead to do whatever it was you were going to do with the thing you were planning to sell, and you don't incur that capital gains tax. And that can be for consumption, but it could also be for investing in something else. So a lot of rich people or investment companies, they operate like that. And the consequence of that then is that those Bitcoin don't get sold. Instead, you're taking out a loan and you're getting money from someone else and you're spending that. So net consequence then is that those Bitcoins that would otherwise get sold are now not getting sold on the market. So of course, that's good for Bitcoin price, less sell pressure.
In fact, a very important question here, the asset entities, which is Strife, which is under Vivek, they have a thing called a Section 351 loophole in the IRS tax code, where you could have Bitcoin at $10 and you could have a big bag of it like a Max Kaiser guy, and you can transfer it to this company, Strive, and they'll give you stock and you incur no capital gains. And the other thing that's so important as well, CTO, is not only do you not pay capital gains taxes on money you borrow, you actually write off the interest, which is what I call middle-class welfare. It's, really powerful. Tom, what do you think of all of this craziness? And look at the great white hype again. Could people still lend their Bitcoin to Asset? I think Asset only works with large players. By the way, they don't work with willy-nilly retail for now. They don't have the rails for that. But they work with people who've got maybe 1,000 Bitcoin or a few thousand Bitcoin and want to avoid taxes. And also move it out of cold storage to a safer place, which you'll talk about later. What do you think of all of this, Tom?
Maybe I'm not rich enough, but the idea of taking a loan on my Bitcoin is very scary to me. I have flashbacks to kind of the Celsius BlockFi era of... That was like their claim of their income. I don't know. I have bad vibes from it. Maybe, again, I'm just not rich enough, but I don't plan on doing it.
Yeah. Even with like a Fidelity or one of these big players, they've got too much reputational risk to lose. That's what I've been waiting for.
That's how I felt. That's what we felt about FTX at the time. I mean, it's different. But we felt, these guys are too big. The big players are in. Nothing bad can happen. Yeah. Not for me. That's my opinion on it.
What do you reckon, Mando? Would you borrow against your Bitcoin?
I think there's two questions. Is it good on a personal level? Is it good for the market? I think it's a range of different things on a personal level. Like if you don't want to do capital gains, it can be an interesting scenario. I think in special cases, sometimes if you default on the loan, it can sometimes not even count as like you can avoid capital gains altogether. But I think it has to be like if it's recourse to other things. But but on an industry-wide level, adding leverage in institutional size to Bitcoin, I think, adds a bit more risk to the Bitcoin market, if I'm honest. Like, if you add leverage, then you're going to get liquidations, and things can get a little bit bad. So the reason why they're in that business is so that they can collect interest, or you default on the loan. And I think that would probably lead to not a great scenario. Let's say if Bitcoin did nosedive, you now got a situation here where leverage is being added in multiple different ways. You've got the treasuries where they're raising debt generally to buy Bitcoin, or converts, or debt like instruments. And now you have everyone getting into Bitcoin lending. It does make you think that we're setting some of the things up for the next bear. Like, you could get some nasty wicks when some of these sort of stories come out.
Yeah.
And like Fidelity liquidates someone with 30,000 Bitcoin. Like, ugh.
So that gives us hope. That gives us hope for a bear market. And I'm one of these perverse people that actually love bear markets, because I know that's where the money is made. A lot of people disappear in the bear market, and that's the worst time to leave the market. This is the time to disappear at the top of the market, not in the bear. But there are new tools as well, which tie into exactly what you said. This is slide 22. I didn't think we'd even get to this. But shout out to Adam Livingston. I talked a bit about STRK and STRF. These are the MicroStrategy instruments, preferred stock, that are extremely safe. For this thing to get into hot water, Bitcoin price needs to fall to $15,000. Put that in perspective. 15 grand. Is Bitcoin going to fall 87%? Pardon?
So I don't think MicroStrategy is the one that would go first now. Like, actually, I think MicroStrategy has been pretty diligent so far in where it could be. If he wants to raise another, whatever, is it 50 billion? Like,
yep.
that number could go up higher. But a lot of other companies have got much higher debt to, let's say, asset ratios. And those will be the ones that go. I don't think MicroStrategy, you won't hear about MicroStrategy being the one that goes if Bitcoin drops 20, 30%. It will be others. Or if these stocks start trading in a discount, that would be the other one.
But I love this, though, the way, and I made video over a year and a half ago about how MicroStrategy could reinvent the bond market. You can't get as low risk as this. Like an 87% drawdown on Bitcoin, your principal's protected. If they don't pay your coupon, 1% gets added to the coupon, so it goes to 11% every year as well. And it's a call option on the future on the price of Bitcoin. It's fixed duration, institutional custody, no crypto risk, and the boomers like it. This is going to be 10% compared to 3.8% or 3.75% on a treasury. It seems to be a new thing. CTO, would you ever touch such a product?
I think it's definitely interesting, for sure. I don't own any right now, but when talking about this, what's the tail risk? Like, what's the tail risk of Bitcoin going to 15,000?
Yeah.
Pretty low. And I think people might start comparing that risk with what's the risk of the bond market, the US bond market actually collapsing, that they can't sell their bonds. What happens then? What if they start defaulting on some bonds? Maybe they don't default on all the bonds, but maybe they say that, actually, guys, the ones we don't like here, we're going to default on your bonds. Sorry. Can that happen? What's if you just want to protect your money? We don't ask for much here, right? We fine if the money doesn't disappear. Say that's our only ambition, and then we start comparing, some Bitcoin-based product here, bonds on the other hand, which is actually a higher risk to lose the money. I would say that maybe it's the bond market right now. I don't know. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's one thing that I would be considering, parking money once we get to the top of a market to kind of go risk off. It's kind of like what we did with JLP last year, Mando. Remember the good old days? 81% yield, which went to 30. What is it now? 30, 32?
Oh, way less, man. This is why I'm kind of out of it. It's
exactly. Yeah.
It's
But I think it's an interesting one to consider for people out there, especially if you look at some other things. And again, you can't knock. The other thing that everybody's concerned about is MicroStrategy. How long can it continue to completely crush every other asset out there? Whatever time frame you're looking at, MicroStrategy smashes the Mag 7. And if you start looking back to 2020, it's 3,000%. So it's been a bonkers trade, but people are worried what should they do, which takes us to one of the next questions is what's going on with alt season? Everybody's saying, okay, really tired waiting for these things to move. Is alt season dead? Is there a future in gaming and AI tokens? That one's for you, Mando. The Solana ecosystem is on fire. The adoption, the revenue it's making is bonkers. It's not reflected in the price. Wintermute keeps pulling thousands of dollars from Binance, thousands of Solana, hundreds of thousands of Solana to keep the price suppressed, many believe. And are people holding altcoins? Are they rotating into Bitcoin? Or are people rotating into AI stocks? That's something I'm doing. Or plan to do. But this is a complex situation. People are frustrated. I'm going to kick this to you, Tom. I know you said you're OG Bitcoin guy. Do you tell us what your bag looks like? Do you dabble in any of these old things?
I sure wish I hadn't in the past. I wish I'd been more maximal. I certainly have many different coins, some of which are, worthless at this point, and I just have them dead somewhere. But I'm about 90% Bitcoin, and I'm pretty comfortable. There's been times in every other cycle where that feels uncomfortable, where it's like, man, I really didn't take on enough risk. I should have been in this and that. And as time goes on, I'm regretting less and less not buying into things. But looking at Bitcoin dominance, to throw Benjamin Cohen's favorite topic in, we haven't really had an alt season. And we keep hearing, oh, it's alt season, it just started, this and that. We have had no alt season really of any kind since September of 22. Dominance has really moved up to the right.
Yeah, well, we would argue here, Tom, that there's always an alt season to be had. You just have to be on that train. So there's always something spiking and pumping. And Mando knows that very well, too. Mando, do you think... people are asking questions about gaming. I don't know anything about gaming. I know a little bit about AI crypto. Do you think that has a shot or this future, especially with all the talk around the convergence between Bitcoin and AI?
Yeah, gaming feels like another cycle's come and gone for it, if I'm honest. There was off the grid was probably the breakout gaming game potentially gaming coin that was to come from this, and it just didn't really materialize into the same sort of numbers that you would need for it to be sustained. So it feels as though gaming is at least another cycle or two away, probably along with the metaverse stuff. AI, I do think that there's some interesting ones there, obviously around the agents. Then you have some of the training model L1s like Tau, which I think has been interesting. So Virtuals has had a good last few months, AI16Z, and then you had, and like I said, Tau have probably been the three biggest. Virtuals has probably taken the crown for being the one that's performed the best. It kind of has but what I would say is that, and I'm in the trenches. I am gambling a little bit more, and I would say that we lost a lot of the entrants into the last few months than I saw in November. November was a very different sort of time. It felt like all of my friends were asking me, what are the coins to own, who weren't even in crypto. There was a lot of onboarding around that time, and you saw parabolic moves in a number of different subsets of altcoins. This one, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like retail is here. I don't, even with Bitcoin hitting all-time high, I had no one asking me any questions. It doesn't feel like there is that user base to buy altcoins. Who is coming in and buying the best narrative. So I think it's a little bit more risky. This time around, I would say, I do think, I have been more bullish on, whereas my plays were kind of more Solana based, they've been more ETH based. I think there is still a bit of a narrative here for ETH, the L1. I don't even know if that extends down to ETH beta as much, which I always think is a really dangerous term when you start thinking about L1 betas. But I do think ETH could have a little bit of a run. I still believe that.
Let's talk about that while we're on the topic. And because ETH, you have been talking about it, Vitalik comes out with yet another plan. This one is interesting. His new scaling goals and ambitions. He wants to take ETH to scale it up 10x, which would take it to about 100 transactions per second, and then take a breather for a couple of years before the next big leap. Again, L1 means increasing the main network's transaction capacity. If ETH's current L1 throughput is around 10 transactions per second, 10x would be 100 transactions per second. And I think it's a joke because all the other chains are going for 1 million transactions per second. I don't get it. I'm going to go to CTO first, and then Tom and Mando chime in. I mean, this is just, it's too little too late as far as I'm concerned, Mando, but does it really matter?
I know, I can take it just briefly. I'm not really that bullish on this bit. Like, I think this is the, this will be, it's going to take a long time to scale it. The things that I've seen which have been different is Pectra has gotten the supply situation slightly better. And then what I saw this week, which was that SharpLink, I don't know if you saw this story, but this was a company that's now raising $1 billion to buy ETH and did like a 20x on the week.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we've seen that. And that sort of stock reaction means that you're going to see other people go on and do this. So my view here is that it's not that I'm a big believer in Bitcoin dominance actually going up, but I still think that you can have a period here where ETH is a good trade. And I would be unsurprised if ETH goes to 4K over the next few months.
Yeah, in fact, you mentioned Pectra. That takes me to a topic that I saw earlier in the week or last week. And that is, and maybe CTO, you can address this from a technology perspective, but the feature from Pectra upgrade enables much more, make it easier for hackers to drain crypto wallets with stolen private keys. This is the EIP, I think 7702, and lets wallets act like smart contracts, which criminals use to automatically forward stolen funds. And over 100,000 smart contracts have already been exploited due to hackers. You don't hear about this story, but I can't remember who it was the blockchain.co or some other site reported on this as well. CTO, how is this happening? How is Pectra benefiting crypto theft gangs?
I haven't actually studied it well enough to answer that, so I don't know. But I mean, an enemy of things going right is complexity. And I think Vitalik has also really recognized that problem.
Yeah.
The code base and everything, it's gotten really complex. And they start talking about we have to put a cap on number of lines of code and so on. Because at the end of the day, the more complex it becomes, the harder it becomes to avoid unintended consequences. But I don't know if that's the case here, if it's something else. But I do like simplicity. And all the complexity being built here with the different layers and so on and so forth. And then talking about 10x in 1 year and a bit, I think he said in the interview. And the guy said, why not 1 year? And so on. So, I mean, I also think it's too little, too late. The other chains are also talking about massive upgrades from now to 1 year. I'm not so impressed by the technology. I feel that the whole L2 thing went massively wrong. Huge split of liquidity, huge consequences for the user who feels like they're on different networks, and the user base and the money is like spread over a lot of ecosystems instead of one. And that didn't go as intended. And I think Mando's point, like we talked about it in a couple of weeks ago, that all that on one side, we understand all those subtleties. But I think there might be a lot of other players who are still on the idea, should we buy Bitcoin? And if we do, maybe we should buy a little bit of the second one, whatever it's called, the coding one with that, skinny guy, what's his name? So they are like, actually we should buy some Ethereum also. I think that, to Mando's point, I think that can still drive the price of Ethereum, even if we understand all these not so good things with it. And I mean, ETH BTC, if I can show the chart for 1 second.
Yep.
Or maybe I show this one first. Like to Tom's point just a while ago, we haven't had any alt season. That has been like a straight line up. It felt like maybe it would happen here a couple of weeks ago. It didn't. It just continued up. So we haven't had it, while ETH BTC has actually made a bottom pattern here. This was a bottom pattern. Someone went in and bought large quantity here, and they kind of turned this chart around. So, I mean, there is someone buying large quantity of Ethereum. At the same time, as I saw you had on the agenda, James, that Sol BTC has been fairly weak here for some time. It actually had a bottom pattern, but it failed, and it fell below this. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts here. Is there like some shift back over to investing in Ethereum, or is it manipulation, or is it something else behind this? I know a lot of people are wondering that, and especially James, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's clear Wintermute and Binance are keeping their lid on the price for Solana. The question is why, and I always try and think a couple of layers deeper as to why. But FTX is distributing $5.6 billion, started Friday, will finish by tomorrow close of business. 3 days, dumping $5.6 billion. The question is, does somebody who has that money, are they looking to deploy it back into a certain asset, and that's why Wintermute's keeping it down, or is that a very far-fetched theory? Mando, you can think in 4 dimensions regarding what happens behind the curtains. What do you think? Conspiracy theory? Madness?
I mean, I do always think that you should think to the next level of these sort of things. I don't know, other than I think Solana's had a very, very strong, if I was to think about it from my avenue, what I said before was that I think a lot of this hasn't been retail cycle, like this bit at least. I haven't seen new wallets come in, and I think Solana is the chain to own when it's huge number of wallets come in. So I think it looks undervalued to me versus a lot of other things. But do I think it's like, I'm always perplexed when you bring up the value of other L1s, which call themselves Solana killers versus Solana, because Solana just dominates when it comes to activity. But do I think it's the strongest horse to own right now? Like I've said like a few times, that I feel like because that activity isn't really with us right now, activity chains is maybe not the thing to own. So I think that's where it's being challenged. I would never go short it, and I think it'll always have a bid to it. So it's not like it's going to fall out of bed. But I think that's probably why it's underperformed relative to Bitcoin, because the people that are coming in and would use them actively are not here this time. Maybe we require Bitcoin to go to like 120K for that sort of, oh my God, what should I own? Like everyone's asking you about crypto again, but I just haven't felt it, and that's probably why it's been a bit soggy.
Yeah, and just for the record, by the way, people talk about Sui being the Solana killer. Solana has over 6 million daily active users today. Sui has 280,000. ETH has 440,000. So Sui has fallen out of bed completely, which is crazy. And all the action, again, from my hyperliquid experience, it's impossible to use any other chain. And this is where, you got these platforms like Axiom jumping from obscurity to being a top platform. Has anybody here used Axiom Exchange?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Well, it's one of these other like trading bots, basically. These trading bots have made wild amounts of money. People talk about Pump Fun making money. Pump Fun's made just shy of $1 billion. The trading bots have also made about $1 billion over the last couple of years. And this is Axiom, this is BonkBot, this is Photon, this is BullX. Like, we're talking about $1 billion. And then you have the DEXs themselves. There's a lot of money been made by the protocols here. A lot of money.
Huge money.
The latest one.
And that's what's bonkers. If you take traditional finance metrics on valuation of these assets, oh my goodness, there's rumors. Actually, I'm on this website where you can buy things pre-IPO. Called Hive, and Phantom is listed there. Phantom will probably IPO at a $4 billion plus market cap. It's a freaking wallet, but it makes a ton of money. So does Bonk.fun, so does Pump, all these different things. They make huge money. So if you look at their profitability or a revenue multiple, it's insane. Anyway,
no one makes more money than Solana apps. Like, Solana apps make more than most chains.
Exactly. So over to you again, Tom. Do you do any equities? You said you're 90% Bitcoin. You probably no stocks at all. No stocks.
No, I don't recommend this, but Bitcoin crypto took me from a very humble life to doing well, and haven't dabbled really into these stocks yet.
Cool.
It's on my radar.
Yeah, a lot of people are asking. I know CTO and Mando, you have exposure to some equities and some AI equities. A lot of people are asking that question again. CTO, is it time to rotate from altcoins? Give up the ghost and buy stonks instead? What would you say?
I don't know where the stock. I kept saying it now for like 2 months, but I'm still not sure where the stock market as a whole is going. So that on one side. On the other side, we have learned from previous crashes that the technology trends, they tend to punch through the economics trends. Like the underlying strength of AI is at the end of the day not going to care so much about the tariffs and all that. It's going to punch through anyway. That's what we saw previously. Like if you zoom out and you look at, I don't know, Apple or Microsoft or Nvidia or anything, and you look at the major financial crisis, you can barely see it. Of course, they do go down, but the strength of the technology trend is much bigger than the strength of the shakeout in the financial markets. So that on one side, but if we're trying to, time it exactly, I don't know. I actually thought that I was surprised by the strength of the recovery here. I thought it would be more shaky while this whole tariff debate is still going on, but it's been a strong recovery. And I still don't know. I feel that it's still a little bit shaky. Are we going to have like global tariffs for a long time, or is it soon over this negotiation and we just carry on then after that? I don't know.
Well, we knew it was easy to make many nations bend the knee, which we've seen very quick, UK, etc., for example. But the problem is China. They are ruthless negotiators. Mando, what's your macro view of stocks, tariff tantrums? Would you advise people to rotate their altcoins into AI stocks? Top question of the week last week.
I mean, altcoins have been pretty down. If you look at the others chart, it's not a pretty one.
Yeah,
I think you do have to consider those things. You can't just think of crypto in isolation. Like there's lots of money in let's say subsectors of stocks with similar sort of return profiles. I mean, I'm definitely interested in AI as a whole. I have not gone into. I feel like the majority of the AI stocks are large caps, but maybe that's changed more recently. Maybe a few more things have done an IPO or not, but I've always found it difficult to find like low cap AI stocks. Let's put it that way. But I do think if you're investing in altcoins, you should 100% be considering the return profile of other asset classes. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't think you can just look at them in isolation and be like, I'm just a crypto guy, because the return profile, at least on overall basis, it's questionable. It's definitely questionable. Outside of others is the index of outside the top 10, I believe. So if you're investing things outside the top 10, then a lot of the time it's not going to make you money.
Exactly. Remember, always balance risk and reward. We're going to wrap up with two final topics which were important. One is this guy Kash Patel. It's so funny. There's a funny meme going around like, I am the captain now. I am the deep state now. This is Kash Patel, head of the FBI. But he's sounding the alarm on the Federal Reserve. Everybody needs to wake up. It isn't a public institution. It's a private entity run by the elite robber barons who built this way back 110 years ago. What was that Jekyll Island book years and years ago? The meeting there.
This is what?
It's very wild. He's been saying it since before he even got sworn in. He's saying this is a funky group of people that, with their money printing and their control and the Cantillon effect, are doing lots of things to harm, let's say, the market. But, you look at the ECB, they do the exact same thing. All these central bankers are banksters. It's pretty clear. You seem shocked by that, Mando.
Because he's the, you know,
Hell, the FBI. He's calling out.
Yeah.
He's calling out the Fed. The FBI is calling out the Fed. You can't make this stuff up.
Look, there's something to be said about what he's saying in that if you are looking at the most important, I don't know if it was the case like 20 or 30 years ago. Obviously, there's been some very famous Fed chairs, but like often the president and the Fed both had like a almost equal effect on the stock market. I would say central bank governors have had a far outsized influence on the stock market and all asset classes since 2008. Like they are the ones in control because they're printing the money constantly. So there's something to be said about like the actual branch of power here needs to be somehow wrestled from the Fed. The only way to do that is to get rid of money printing, but it feels like everyone's hooked on that drug now. So I don't know if it's a simple solution.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. They're never going to get rid of it.
Yeah, it is kind of scary and interesting, but something to be considered. So this one final macro story. We try to keep this to an hour. We're at the hour. This was very concerning for me over the weekend. We saw the futures take a little bit of a hit. We saw the biggest drone attack ever in the history of the world. I don't know the exact details, but somehow a truckload or multiple truckloads of drones got across the Russian border, drove in 500 kilometers, maybe more, and then deployed an attack force of swarm drones to destroy 40 long-distance Russian bombers. And I just look at this as a game of chess. You don't do that to Putin without a retaliation. And now apparently Vladimir Putin has these Oreshnik missiles, which are hypersonic and can do a lot of destruction. Nobody seems panicked about this, and maybe I'm just too paranoid. But Tom, you've been tracking the movements over the weekend. Does it alarm you?
Yeah, this has just been going on for so long. I think that a lot of people are numb to just hearing about this conflict.
Good point.
I really have tried to check out from it a little bit. You know, it's very important. I'm very anti-war, but it's a very important thing going on in the world. It's just, man, there's a lot of kind of depressing news in the cycle, and you gotta take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. And for me, that's checking out a little bit when it comes to these things.
Very good point. And remember, mainstream media is designed to terrify us because fear sells, and nobody is looking at their rags anyway, or their nonsense that they spew out. So everybody, just be careful what you read in media. But this is where, you know, X is really shaking things up, because you see things that you'd never hear about in the media, like riots in Paris over the weekend. Absolutely alarming. You can find 1,000 videos of that. That is not fake news. That's very, very real. CTO, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I was also kind of disappointed. I thought that they were moving more towards
negotiations today.
Negotiations and maybe ending the conflict. I'm very against war. I feel that they should end it. And I think Trump has really tried to bring parties together and try to end the war. And I hope that's successful. And of course, each party accelerating how much they can blow up from the other party isn't really working in that direction, probably. But I'm no expert on this.
Yeah. Mando, do you think this could hit the markets, or are people just, like Tom said, war jaded, too much saber rattling? We just don't care anymore. But the other thing is, when you look at what Europe is doing, the military industrial complex in places like Germany, they're ramping up their tanks and the missiles. The UK have spent, I think, $500 billion or something on plans for a war machine. Europe is excited to go to war. Is that because that's what you do when you have crises at home, which is what has happened over the last 5,000 years in history? Tough question.
I don't know. This exact headline, it's a strange one, because I think what's actually happened here is there's a lot of worry that like the US is just going to pull out of its support for Ukraine, and Putin may be vying for time here. So these have there doesn't really seem to be a impetus for peace. So what you've seen is over the last week is, I think they allowed long range strike missiles. Germany allowed it to be delivered to Ukraine, and then you've seen this. So this may be seen as, right, come to the negotiating table, or we're going to allow them to do this sort of stuff. Remember, these sort of strikes haven't happened, at least deep into Russia, for a long time. So maybe it's that, because Trump was like notably frustrated around all this last week, said, you know, Putin's crazy and Zelensky should just shut his mouth and is getting himself in trouble. So there's this idea that they need to come to an agreement. This could easily turn the other way, though. And
absolutely, yeah. You don't. It reminds me of a little bit like a kind of like a Pearl Harbor, how a country reacts when you hit them on the inside when they're not expecting it or used to it. And it also shocks me about how bad the security is in Russia. That was a big surprise too. Imagine in the US, you let a whole bunch of Mexican trucks in and just bomb the hell out of all our Air Force bases. I mean, it just seems really strange. Anyway, I do want to say, before we get to our closing thoughts for the week ahead, a lot of stuff is weird out there. The bond markets around the world are dying. Fiat money printers back in full gear. We're not seeing an impact on M2, global M2 on altcoins, but we are definitely seeing it on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin treasuries are here. Bullish outlook still for Bitcoin and AI with that convergence. But Tom, thank you for joining the team today. What's your outlook for the next 7 days, or is it just going to be chopped sideways? Because typically with Bitcoin, all the price action happens in the latter part of the month, not the first part of the month. The first 2 weeks always suck. That's what I've seen in charts anyway. And the last 2 weeks is when things kick off. What do you see?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Great conversations. Great
Links
topics.
below for everybody here, by the way. Follow them all.
This week ahead, man, I think we're going to start off to a little bit of red, as we have almost every time we close strong on any big time frame. I don't have huge expectations, but I would, in the next, let's say, week or two, maybe look for a swing low, and I'd remain bullish. This Fed just updated M2 for the US, another all-time high in April. I mean, it's no surprise, but more money, prices go up. It's hard to be bearish on it.
Exactly. Excellent point. And by the way, I learned a new technical term today before we started. It's called mogging. Mando, mogging.
Well, I didn't know if Tom was mogging, but yeah, like there are famous pit vipers. Those aren't pit vipers, though, to be clear. But he could have been mogging.
Yeah. So Tom Crown, everybody's asking, what's with the glasses? Too much screen time?
Well, in the beginning when I started streaming, I just tried them one day as a joke, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in streaming on YouTube, and then I didn't wear them the next day, and the audience was like, "Where are the glasses? We like the glasses." And so I was like, "All right, I guess." And they have a lot of valuable kind of elements as a streamer. If you have bright lights on, they're polarized, they're blue light. They help with the screens. Yeah. They kind of just stuck. So
good point. But you're not hiding who you are. Some people are saying, "Can we trust him without the glass?" There you go. He's a real human. Good. CTO, outlook for next week. 2 weeks of chop and then bounce towards the end of the month. That's my call.
I remain fairly bullish here. My feeling is that it's the dip which is the fake, not the breakout. So yeah, that's my base assumption. The trend, different time frames, they still remain up. So I lean towards another attempt at the breakout. But if that doesn't happen, I will take action accordingly.
Awesome. Thank you, CTO. And Mando, before we wrap, you're going to see Ethereum go to the moon. What's your plan?
Yeah, Bitcoin's my biggest bag. ETH is my second biggest bag right now. I'm not expecting some crazy altcoin season here. I'm just I'm playing a little bit safe, and I would be unsurprised if we touch a lower level like 102, 101k, and then I do think we're going to be strong in June. Though I do think we can go back towards all-time high.
Yep. Good. And for the record, by the way, all of us here on this channel, some comments regarding the war and stuff. I don't like war. None of us like war. It's extremely wrong for people to be sent to the meat grinder. So I want to be very clear on that. What we do, though, is report the news when it has an impact on markets. And I don't believe what Putin or Zelensky are doing is the proper way. They should have come to the table for peace a long time ago. So that's my piece on the war. I am not I'm not pro either. Okay. Pro peace. I'm on the side of peace, as are most Bitcoiners, by the way. And there's also a potential vision that if everybody had Bitcoin, there'd be global peace. Who knows? Solves all the problems. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for a great show. Wish you all a very good week. And thank you once again, Tom, for joining us. The links are below for everybody. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe.
I guess.
Bye.
Thank you.